does a machine weighing over 500,000 kilograms just casually lift off the ground? Seriously, look at the Airbus A380. This beast has a maximum takeoff weight of 575 tons. To put that in perspective, visualize 4 to 5 massive freight locomotives hitched together. Common sense says that kind of incredible metal weight should be permanently pinned to the tarmac. Yet, there it goes, climbing effortlessly to 40,000 feet and cruising across entire oceans for 15 hours straight. Basic human instinct looks at that and screams, "Nope, that should be impossible." Physics, however, proves otherwise. Today, the goal is to break down exactly what is happening when a plane leaves the Earth. By the end of this video, that simple takeoff will never look the same again. It won't look like a basic jump into the sky. It will look like a total physics miracle. Because every single detail visible on modern airplanes exists for a reason. It's the result of more than a century of mistakes, failed prototypes, and stubborn human persistence in the battle to conquer the sky. For ages, humans weren't actually flying. People were just drifting in balloons, completely at the mercy of the wind. That changed when Sir George Cayley realized a game-changing truth. To fly, you have to separate lift from thrust. Otto Lilienthal then proved that wings need a curve to grab the air, but he paid the ultimate price in 1896 when his glider stalled and plummeted. That tragedy sparked the Wright brothers. They failed hundreds of times, eventually building a wind tunnel in their bike shop to stop guessing and start controlling. In 1903, they hit that viral moment. The flight lasted just 12 seconds, shorter than a skippable YouTube ad. But it changed everything. From wooden props to the massive Airbus A380, the journey has been wild. But here's the twist. The laws of physics haven't moved an inch. Every flight is still just a high-stakes game of balance against nature. And the cost of losing that balance is exactly why the next part is so critical. How does a massive chunk of metal just hang there, suspended in the clouds? Is it magic? Not quite. It's actually a battle, a never-ending tug-of-war. Think of an airplane in flight as being pulled by 4 invisible ropes. First up is weight. Gravity is stubborn. It constantly tries to drag the plane back down to Earth. But fighting right back? That's lift. The wings generate this force to push the entire machine upward. One pulls down, one pushes up. Simple, right? Next, there is thrust. The engines roar to life to drive the plane forward. But the air doesn't just let that happen. It fights back with drag. Think about the feeling of sticking a hand out the window of a fast-moving car. That's it. That's the air hitting the hand and pushing back. So what's the secret? It comes down to one word: balance. It's like a high-speed seesaw moving at hundreds of miles per hour. But the second that balance shifts, everything changes instantly. Need to go higher? Add more lift. Want to go faster? Hit the gas and crank up the thrust. Every smooth move in the sky is really just a masterclass in managing these 4 forces. No magic required, just physics doing its thing. Now for the million-dollar question. How can air, something that feels so light and thin, lift a massive flying fortress into the sky? Most people have heard the classic explanation. Air travels a longer path over the top of the wing, so it has to move faster to meet the air underneath, which creates lift. It sounds neat and logical, but here's the kicker. It's totally wrong, or at least it's not the whole story. So what's actually happening? It starts with the shape of the wing, curved on top and flatter on the bottom. But even more important than the shape is the fact that the wing is always tilted slightly upward against the oncoming wind. Engineers call this the angle of attack. Want to see this in action? It's simple. Next time someone is driving, safely stick a hand out the window. Keep the palm flat and nothing happens. But tilt that palm up just a tiny bit and suddenly a massive force slams the hand upward. Why is that tiny tilt so powerful? Because the wing is pulling off 2 moves at once. First, it creates a low-pressure zone on top. As the wing tilts, the air rushing over that top curve is forced to speed up like crazy. Faster air means lower pressure, basically acting like an invisible vacuum cleaner, sucking the wing upward. At the same time, the wing is physically smacking the air downward. The bottom of the wing hits the airflow and forces it down. According to the laws of action and reaction, if the wing pushes the air down, the air has to push the wing back up. That perfect combo, The suction from above and the punch from below is the secret to keeping 500 tons of steel gliding effortlessly through the clouds. No magic, just physics working overtime. But here's the thing. That angle of attack isn't some magic wand that can be used forever. In aviation, getting too greedy with that tilt is a fatal mistake. A common misconception is that the higher a pilot points the nose, the more lift the plane gets. In reality, it's the exact opposite. If the nose is pulled up too aggressively, the airflow loses its ability to stick to the curve of the wing. Think of the air like a race car screaming toward the crest of a hill. If the slope is gentle, the car stays glued to the pavement and glides right over. But if that hill suddenly turns into a vertical wall, the car gets launched into the air instead of following the curve of the road. In the flying world, that launch moment is called a stall. The second the airflow breaks away, the entire pressure system collapses and lift vanishes almost instantly. At that point, the plane isn't flying anymore. It's falling like a stone. This is why managing the angle of attack is a pilot's #1 priority. They have to keep that air locked onto the wings at all costs. However, engineers have come up with a brilliant cheat code. If someone looks closely at the wing of an Airbus A380, they'll see rows of tiny fins that look like a miniature fence. These are vortex generators. These hidden details are incredibly powerful. They create tiny cyclones that pump extra energy into the air right against the wing's surface, helping the flow stay attached even when the plane is at a steep, dangerous angle. It costs a little bit of extra drag, but it acts as a lifesaver, allowing these giants of the sky to fly safer than ever before, all while the passengers barely even notice they're there. Now, let's talk about the single most important variable in the entire game: speed. In aviation physics, there's a complex formula for lift, but there is only one golden rule worth remembering. Speed is squared. It means if a plane doubles its speed, the lift doesn't just double, it jumps up 4 times. On the flip side, if the speed drops by half, the plane instantly loses 75% of its lift. This is the thin line between soaring gracefully and falling out of the sky. Think back to the hand out the car window example. If the car is sitting still, there's no force. But once the driver hits the gas, the air starts slamming into the hand and shoving it upward. Airplane engines work the exact same way. Technically, the engines don't lift the plane at all. Their only job is to generate insane amounts of speed. When that aircraft screams down the runway fast enough, it's forcing tons of air to collide with the wings every single second. The more air those wings can bend downward, the more lift they create. That's exactly why a giant of the sky can't just hop off the ground instantly. It needs a massive head start to build up momentum until the lift is finally strong enough to overpower its own colossal weight. At that exact moment, the miracle of flight truly begins. So, what actually happens during those intense seconds of takeoff? It's not as simple as just floor it and hope for the best. It's actually a high-stakes race through 3 points of no return. First is V1, also known as the decision speed. Once a plane hits this mark, the pilots are committed. Even if an engine catches fire or something goes horribly wrong, they have to take off. There simply isn't enough runway left to stop that much mass safely. At V1, the only way to survive is to get into the air. Next comes VR, or rotation. This is the golden moment where the pilot pulls back on the stick and points the nose toward the sky. For a giant like the Airbus A380, this happens at around 150 to 170 knots. That tiny shift in angle causes a massive surge in lift, suddenly hoisting hundreds of tons of steel off the tarmac. At this exact moment, there's a fascinating handoff of power. The wings take over the entire load from the wheels. To make this transition perfect, the A380's fuel system even starts automatically pumping gas between tanks, including one in the tail, to keep the center of gravity perfectly balanced. This doesn't just keep the plane stable, it cuts down on drag, saving fuel for the 15-hour trek ahead. Finally, there's V2, the safety speed. This is the number that guarantees the plane can keep climbing steadily, even if an engine fails, instead of stalling and falling back down. Watching closely, it's clear the plane doesn't really jump into the sky. It just reaches a point where lift finally cancels out weight. It's the moment the machine realizes it doesn't need the ground anymore. Welcome to the sky. Why do passenger jets always climb to 35,000 feet, an altitude where the air is bone dry and oxygen is nearly non-existent? Why not just stay lower? The answer is a simple rule of survival. Thin air is paradise. Think of it like running. Running on a sidewalk? Easy. But try running through a swimming pool. The water drags against every movement, draining energy in seconds. Lower altitude air is just like that water. It's thick, it's heavy, and it forces the plane to muscle its way through. As the plane climbs higher, that pool thins out. This allows the aircraft to scream across the sky much faster with minimal resistance. But here's the real secret. The bone-chilling minus 67 degrees Fahrenheit at that altitude is actually a gift. Jet engines are basically addicted to cold air. The massive temperature gap between the freezing air being sucked in and the scorching fire inside the engine allows the machine to convert fuel into thrust with incredible efficiency. Also, at this cruising altitude, the plane hits a perfect sweet spot. Everything is so balanced, it feels like the aircraft is just hanging motionless among the clouds. However, pilots have to be sharp to stay within a golden speed range. Go too fast, friction starts burning through the airline's bank account. Go too slow, the wings have to tilt up more to grab the air. And ironically, forcing that extra lift can burn more fuel than flying fast. The most interesting part? A plane never just stays at one height. As fuel burns off and the aircraft gets lighter, pilots perform a move called a step climb, stepping up to even thinner air. Every time the plane steps up, it chases away fuel costs. In fact, 2025 research shows that if planes could climb continuously rather than in steps, long-haul flights could save an additional 10%. That's why airlines are obsessed with the high ground. It's where physics saves them millions of dollars every year. An airplane can't stay at top speed forever. To land safely, it has to slow down. The problem? As speed drops, lift falls off a cliff. So how does 500 tons of steel avoid falling like a stone while slowing to a crawl for touchdown? The answer is sitting right outside the window. Watch the wings during landing, and they start to look like something straight out of Transformers. They literally change shape. Panels at the back swing down and the front edges slide out, essentially turning the wing into a giant parachute. This makes the wing more curved and spread out, allowing it to scoop up as much air as possible to keep the plane airborne at low speeds. The front slots are the real MVPs here. They act like tiny channels, forcing a high-speed stream of air over the top of the wing to keep it glued to the surface, even when the nose is pointed high. For anyone worried a plane will just fall if the engine's cut out, look at the legendary Gimli glider of 1983. An Air Canada Boeing 767 ran completely out of fuel at 41,000 feet because of a ridiculous math error between pounds and kilograms. Both engines went silent, yet the plane didn't just drop. It glided in total silence for 17 minutes and made an emergency landing on an old racetrack. Why? Because a plane needs speed to fly, not necessarily engines. Without power, a plane becomes like a bicycle coasting down a hill, trading altitude for forward momentum. As long as the nose stays down enough to keep that speed up, the wings keep working. Right before the tires hit the tarmac, the pilots make one final move called the flare. They gently pull the nose up. It's like leaning back to brace yourself when you're running and trying to stop. This turns the wings into a massive air brake, softening the descent so the plane settles onto the runway instead of slamming into it. The second the wheels touch down, panels on top of the wings pop up to kill any remaining lift, pinning the plane firmly to the ground. That's when the brakes and reverse thrust take over, finally taming the beast and handing all that weight back to the tires. Mission accomplished. The next time a massive airliner lifts off the runway, the hope is that it doesn't look like magic anymore. Instead, it should look like a symphony of absolute precision. Humans didn't actually defeat gravity. It's more accurate to say people learned how to borrow some of nature's harshest rules and turn them into wings. Flying isn't just a privilege for the birds anymore. It's the ultimate reward for truly understanding how the physical world works. But before the video ends, here is a brain teaser that even aviation experts have been fighting over for years. Imagine a plane sitting on a giant conveyor belt. The second the plane starts moving forward, the conveyor belt starts moving backward at the exact same speed. In this crazy scenario, does the plane actually take off, or does it stay stuck in one spot forever? Don't go running to Google just yet. Drop a guess and the reasoning behind it in the comments below. Fair warning, this is one of those internet arguments that never truly ends. See you in the next one.